Alita Wings writes, I need some techniques for making sure the focus of my layouts remains on the photos and the story. Sometimes I'm so into the products that I feel I may be overshadowing the real stuff that matters. Glitter Girl, can you help Alita Wings feature her photos in focus?
Of course I can. Today, I want to share with you a few specific tips to help you keep the focus on your photos and your story, and then you can embellish in a way that suits your style. The first thing I want to look to today is the supplies. I'm using two 4x6 photos, and then I've pulled out a few different supplies that are relevant, and I want to show you how I would pick the papers that would work best for keeping the focus on the photos. So I have travel photos, so I've pulled out some different pieces from October Afternoon Travel Girl, but also some papers by Echo Park and one paper by Dear Lizzie and some Jelly Bean Soup letter stickers. Now it's the papers that I want to start with. I've pulled out these three papers here are from Beautiful Life by Echo Park, and then this one from Dear Lizzie Lucky Charm. Now if you look at them like this, there is a real mix of saturated color and more neutral pattern. I want to show you the reverse side of these patterns to show you something different. All of these sides, they all include high contrast, high saturation color. Lots of color, lots of pattern, lots of things that are bold and catch your eye. But if I look at the reverse of these patterns, these are more subdued, especially this print with the ampersands on a ledger background and the pink music notes on cream. The subtler pattern will keep your eye on the photo and not bring your eye to the paper so much. So I'm looking for things that are small in the size of the pattern, so the scale of the pattern is small and it repeats. So one line of music doesn't go to something completely different on the second line. The idea is that that same design carries throughout the entire page. It doesn't need to be identical. I don't need every row to have the exact same notes on the staff, but the idea of bringing something that will repeat across the page so that it doesn't change and your eye doesn't need to keep up with the design. Same here, there are lots of small ampersands to make this print quite compact, but there's nothing else thrown in to surprise me. So once I get an idea of a small bit of this pattern, I understand visually what it looks like as a full 12 by 12. So both of these are really subtle patterns that will never take the focus away from your photos. Now, it doesn't need to be something that's so neutral and calm and quiet in color as these two patterns. You can use something like this. This is a bolder pattern and it's a more saturated color, but it's a single colored pattern and the pattern still repeats. Now this isn't particularly small, it's more a medium-sized design, but the pattern doesn't change in any way. It's the same doily every time. They all line up perfectly and the colors are limited to just that one neutral and one blue. So although this one is going to compete with photos more than these two, it's going to compete a lot less than something like this that's really bold and has so many colors. So if you find that when you're looking through your album you're not keeping your eye on the photo, try paring back to pattern papers that include small repeating patterns or limit yourself to one bold color at a time and see if that helps keep your eye on the photos. Now, you can still mix in elements that have nice bright colors and patterns by using a cut apart sheet or die cuts or stickers that bring that pattern down to a smaller scale. You can also buy 6x6 paper pads that tend to have those same patterns shrunk down to a smaller scale, and you can use them on a smaller piece of the real estate of the page. If you're only using a little of it, it's not going to distract as much as using that entire bold pattern on the whole 12 by 12. So today I'm going to be using just this one cut apart card here, which is going to interject pink with my neutrals. I'm going to start with these two patterns here, and then I'll end up adding a little bit more color as I go, but I do want to maintain a focus on my photographs. So I have two 4x6 pictures, and one way you can take can keep the focus on your photos is to include larger prints. I really like keeping to standard 4x6 prints when I can because it makes my creative process very easy, and I like the consistency of when I flip through my books. I have a lot of 4x6 photos. I certainly do use pictures that are bigger and smaller than 4x6, but I like the consistency of that as my standard size. But if you find that when you turn through the pages of your book that you're not getting a lot of focus on the photographs, try enlarging the size. Whatever it is that you're using now, try going up one size and see if by having the photo take up that little bit more of the page, it may grab your eye more. Another little cheat, if you've already got them printed, is that you can give them more weight on the page by including a solid colored mat around the photo that will then break it up from the pattern, and the bolder and wider that mat, the more it's going to bring your eye to the photos. I'm going to go ahead and start getting things put together here so we can go through a few more specific tips for keeping your eye on the pictures. If you find that when you flip through your pages in your album that your eye really ignores the journaling, one suggestion would be to always use a strong dedicated space for your journaling. That might be a journaling card, or it might be a box that everything is in a really strong shape, like a square, a rectangle, or perhaps a circle, rather than using free-flowing journaling that's written straight onto the background page in the little gaps that the design leaves. Now, there's nothing wrong with writing straight on the background, and I often find that it's a much easier way to include my story, but if you're feeling that your story is lost, a strong, dedicated journaling space is definitely a way to create more attention-getting treatment with that journaling. Now, what I want to do with these 4 elements is make sure that they're not going to get lost on the page, and I really want your eye to come in and focus on the photos and the details of the story. The cards here, this one's from the Echo Park Cut Apart sheet, and this one is from a Project Life core kit. Because the Project Life core kits all include rounded corners already, I just went ahead and rounded the corners of this one so that the two will match in style that way. And I'm going to put all of these on one shared mat, so they're matted as a block, and that will keep me really focused on the elements there rather than having a lot of separate elements on the page. Now, I've chosen 3 different pattern papers that are sort of my short list for the paper that should go around the photos. I have a map print, which is really on theme for the page, so that's a travel printed paper. It's not the same town on the map that it is in the photos, but I'm only going to be seeing that little edge around the outside of the mat, so you really wouldn't be able to identify the city of the map without looking really, really closely. So that might still work. So I have a map print in gray and cream. I have a pink stripe. This is from My Mind's Eye, and it's a pink and off-white stripe that, although it's not from the same paper collection as this card, it's a pretty good match in color, and it's a nice single color repeated pattern, the stripe, and there's nothing unexpected here. And stripes on the diagonal will really grab your eye when you turn to the page. So there is that color and pattern that would grab your attention and really keep your eye focused on the things in between. And then my third option is this text print from Dear Lizzie Lucky Charm that has navy blue, which is a color I haven't included in the layout yet, and aqua. Well, if I pull these away, I can start to see how they would look with the different elements on the page. And one thing I'm worried about with the pink stripe is that although it's a good match to the color, if I place these items right on top of this, it does mean that I'm going to have those colors right next to each other, and there's not going to be any contrasting color around the edge. I do think that that would help bring the focus away from that particular card and onto the other elements that I'm including. So if I place it like this, you can see that these 3 have a higher contrast around the outside, so they grab your attention more while this one fades into the background. That could be useful in certain projects. I'm not sure that it's what I want to go for here. If I use the map print, I have the theme of the travel page included, but I'm not convinced on the color. Now, I have high contrast color from the items here to the neutral map print background, So you definitely see the journaling cards, you see the photographs, and imagine that this is cut to fit. But when I place that border alongside this, I've got all this neutral here in the background and just another neutral here. I don't have any contrast that pulls my eye into that block. If I then take the third option, I'm hoping that I get a little bit of all those good things. So if I line this up, you're not going to see much of the text. I'm okay with that, and it may be that I want to cut out one line and put it somewhere else on the page so that you can read what's there. But this gives me contrast both from my background to the photos, so I have the border in a contrasting color here, and the contrasting color with the journaling cards. So the pink is something completely different, and the aqua is only shown in the small of the writing, which makes it coordinate, but the navy blue takes over, and that's a stronger look. So if I use this as a frame, then my eye is going to go to what's inside that box of the stronger dark blue color. So I think in this case, that's my better match. And the wording does fit my theme because it's still a you and me type theme to the writing. So I'll save a little strip to put elsewhere on the page so that you'll still be able to read what's on the pattern paper. We've talked a little bit before about how a page title isn't really a necessary thing for every page, and it may mean that by omitting some titles, your focus goes more toward the writing and the photos on your page. Or it might just be that you need to tone the titles down. So this time I've tried something really subtle, well, not really subtle, but less obvious than what I tend to use. So I've used flat stickers for one instead of dimensional stickers. There's no glitter or anything involved, and I've mixed those flat stickers with something that's printed on the card already. So I'm not adding more wording in, I'm just using what's there to complete the title rather than having lots of different pieces here with words that may or may not be fighting for attention as the title or some other element. So now I'm ready to start having a little bit of embellishment on my page, but I want to make sure that whatever embellishment I use doesn't detract from the photos. So a few things to keep in mind are that repeating embellishments will detract less. So if I'm going to use 3 areas of embellishment and I really want to make sure that I don't take your attention away from the photos, I could repeat the same embellishment 3 times. That often means that stamps are a better choice than a big sheet of stickers, because if I use the stamps, I can take whichever stamps I want to use, I can stamp them 3 times and create the embellishment that I want on the page without having different designs in every single area. But if I have a big sheet of stickers like this, I'm not going to get repeats, so it's harder to figure out how I can use that sheet without each area of embellishment being very different. However, there are a few tricks to using the larger sticker sheets that sometimes grab our attention, and that's to look at which things are most similar. So say I wanted to use an airplane motif, there are several airplane motifs here. There are 3 that include that map print, but then there's also a larger one here and a different style of airplane here. So even though I have different stickers, I could get by using them in a way that means the embellishments are similar rather than completely different. So it's a little bit of a step in between. But larger elements that I don't have another piece to work with, like this banner here, or this banner here, or even the bellhop, are better used when I have fewer photos to compete on the page, and also just used sparingly and then mixed in with other elements that can be repeated. Likewise, if you like stickers but you want more attention to the photos and not on the embellishment, pick things that are a little bit plainer, like label stickers, because they're going to be, although each one is different, they're going to be very similar and your eye will read them as the same value on the page rather than something that's very different in each element. So I'm going to use the labels and the stamps, and then I'm also going to bring in some border stickers. And the reason border stickers will work well if you want to repeat embellishments is because you can cut them into different pieces. You don't have to use the full 12 12-inch strip altogether. Washi tape works the same way, of course. So in this case, I'm going to use a little bit of one border sticker in 3 different places on the page, and then build my matching embellishments right on top of that line. So I've started the matching but not identical embellishments. So each one starts with a label sticker, and I've just picked the one from the sheet that works best in that particular space to go on top of the strip of the border sticker. So I have 3 little spots where I've cut that one border sticker down to 3 pieces, then added the label sticker on top. The next piece is a stamp, and I've just looked through the papers that I have left over on my trimmer where I've started cutting things apart, and this particular pattern that I used for the navy blue works really well with this stamp, and using the clear block I can hold the stamp above the pattern and see that that's going to work. So I just stamp the design inside that circle, and then use a die or a punch to cut it out. And don't stamp it all skew-if like I just did. You will of course stamp it perfectly the first time. That's better. Okay, so now I can just take this with my die cutter. So now I can take my circle die, center that in the middle, and I'm just using a bit of tape to hold it in place. Run that through to cut the circle, or you can use a punch or anything else. And in fact, when it's printed on the paper like that, you can just use scissors if you prefer. But now I know that I have those 3 stamped circles all exactly alike, and I can add a bit of brown ink around the edge to make them match and have a little bit more contrast, and I've attached each one of those with a pop dot. So in this particular case, I've not used a lot of dimension. The label stickers are flat, the border stickers are flat, but I did go ahead and add a little bit to one element in the grouping, just so that way I have a little bit of something other than just color and pattern that grabs your eye, because I'm placing them in an arrangement that should hopefully help guide your eye to the photos and not away from it. So they are spaced in a triangle around those important things, so all the important stuff in the layout comes inside that triangle. Now I've just looked at the framing of this stamped lettering here to place my circle piece here. Then sometimes when you're working with circles, it's best to then go to a rectangle so that you have a little bit of variety and have a horizontal element. So I'm using some little word stickers. These are from an older My Mind's Eye collection, but they do them in a few different collections. So I'll just pick a word that fits the story I'm telling here, and I'll add it over to this side. Now usually I tuck the edge of the sticker underneath the element that is popped up off the page, and that way your eye is going to read it as one grouping, not as several separate pieces. So the more compact you can make those groups of embellishment pieces, the more it will seem like one piece rather than lots. Now this might be enough in the embellishment grouping for your style. If you wanted to add a little bit more but you didn't want it to detract from your photos, then what I would look for is to look at just the other colors that are on the page. So I haven't brought any pink into here, for example, and pick something that's very small and simple in shape that you can use to direct attention. So I'm going to use some pink enamel dots by Freckled Fawn, and I'm going to place them on the corner of each group of embellishments. Just making a tiny little triangle here. I don't want them to be too boxy, so I was just seeing what placement would be best there. And here I want to make sure I'm below the photo, not above. This is one place where you could stop with this layout, but what if this is too sparse for your style and doesn't seem to make you happy enough on the page, there are a few more things you can add. So I'm going to show you what I would add to this, and if this is where you would like to stop, please don't worry. There's a photo of it just like this on the page at 2 Peas in a Bucket, and if you're watching on YouTube, you can click the link below the video which will take you there. So that is kind of version 1. And if you want something that's not quite that minimal, there's just a few things I'm going to add, and then you'll be able to see the difference, and hopefully that will help you decide for your own pages without having to take things apart and glue them back together. You can just look at the two side by side and see which one is more your style. So what I'm going to do first is add another layer of paper behind this mat, and that's going to bring in more of the pink color that is used as a just small accent on the page. Currently, I'm going to make the pink a little bit more integral to the color scheme, a little more obvious. So, just going to pop that behind this layer here. And then I want to add a little bit more to the groupings as well. Within this album, pretty much every page includes a camera motif, but I haven't added one here. So I've stamped a few little cameras. This is from a My Mind's Eye stamp set, which includes a camera just here. And I've put these on pop dots that are smaller than the ones I used for the little globe stamped pieces, because my plan here is to be able to layer them so they're still dimensional, but they're not as tall on the page as the ones they've already added. So that can help sometimes, just having a couple different brands of pop dots, because you then have a little bit more freedom with what you can layer in. And then to add a little bit more movement and texture to these groupings, I'm going to bring in some twine. So just going to add a little bit in for each one. And the two quickest ways to adhere the twine, I'm just placing it there so that I know I have a piece for each one. I promise that's not the finished version. The two quickest ways to do it are either normal dot adhesive or to use a tiny attacher. So although I wouldn't normally use both on the same layout, I'm going to show you both on this particular project so that, yeah, again, you can see them in close proximity and be able to make that decision of what is best for your particular style. So with the tiny attacher, I'm just going to staple one end and then twirl it so that it creates a few loops. Then come back to the other side and try to keep the twine and that staple together with this grouping. This one is separate because it's far away on purpose. I haven't put it close and then just missed. I've placed this one further away to have more movement from the twine. But this one, I want to make sure that it's right there on top because I've stapled it close. So I tend to try and make it obvious. Either it should be part of the grouping or it should be purposely spaced far apart. So with this one, I won't use the staples. I'll just use some glue to show you how that can work, and I just run my normal dot adhesive, and I'm using just an offcut there from the pink pattern paper, and then you can just twist it and it will stick right to the page. Now this version you will get you have more control over making actual shapes and loops. If you wanted to spend time looping it into cursive lettering and making it into a word, you could do that with this version, and it would be much more difficult, probably impossible to do with a stapler. So just different versions there that you can try. And I'll add this one. I'm just going to do a really simple layer here and not a lot of curl. So I've added more than that original page already, and you can look to your eye and see if you think there's still enough focus on the photos and the journaling, or if this for your style has gone a little too far now and you wish that it were pared back a little bit, and I'm going to go one last step and then it will be done. I'm going to add just a few small ink drops with the Mint Green Color Shine Mist by Heidi Swapp. And I'm just going to add these here mostly because I wanted to have a little bit that joined this part of the page to this little grouping up here, and then without putting it back into the bottle, just add a couple because I don't want too much, and in fact this is probably even a little more than I planned, but I'm okay with that amount. So that's where I'm going to stop with this second, more embellished version of the page. I hope that you find the comparison side by side useful for identifying with your style. Your challenge this week is to create a layout in absolutely any style you'd like, but in the box below your layout when you upload to the gallery, please tell us how you keep the focus on your photos when you're scrapbooking.
Join us next week for the continuing adventures of Glitter Girl and the ongoing mystery of the scrapbooker behind the mask at twopeasinabucket.com.